Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you're watching from today. I'd love to know. And if you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to like and subscribe. All right, let's jump in. They laughed at first, not out of cruelty, but confidence. The kind that comes from ruling half a galaxy without ever losing a war. Their scanners had cataloged thousands of species, sorted them into threat levels, mapped their genetics, archived their cultures, and moved on. But this one, this odd signature, it confused them. No emissions, no life signs, no known material index. Just a black shape drifting on the edge of their systems, barely registering on scans. It looked broken, hollow, like a derelict left behind by a forgotten war. The analysts called it an artifact. The scouts called it junk. One even said it reminded him of a child's toy ship, half melted in a fire. But then came the anomaly. It moved. Not by propulsion or reaction, just shifted. One click closer, then again. Every time they turned away, it was closer. Silent. Cold. Watching. High Command brushed it off. It's nothing. Just cosmic debris caught in a gravity tide. They sent a patrol, standard sweep. No alarms, no weapons armed. 3 ships, 10 minutes of silence, then static, then nothing. The data came back only once, just a single snapshot before total blackout. 1 frame, 1 image. A black hull stretching wider than any known carrier class. Its surface looked like it breathed, shimmering in ways their sensors couldn't explain, folding light inward like it was drinking reality. It wasn't a ship. It was a presence. And stamped across the side in fractured, glitching code, barely translated, was a single word: Leviathan. They didn't understand what they were looking at. Not then. Because what their scanners couldn't comprehend was that this wasn't a vessel. It was a grave. And something inside it had just woken up. It should have ended there. 1 patrol lost. Regrettable, but not uncommon. Space is cruel, and strange things happen in the void. The Vorthari Empire had lost ships before. Entire scout groups swallowed by stellar flares or dragged into black holes. They always rebuilt, always moved on. But this time, the silence lingered. Then came the data leak. Small at first, just noise in the system, a ghost in the code. Ship logs rewritten, navigation maps distorted, defense satellites failing to respond to pings. Some even turned inward, scanning their own stations as if the threat was already among them. Still, the warlords didn't listen. Still, they laughed. And then the stars began to die. One by one, sectors fell dark. Not attacked, not invaded, just gone. Whole colonies went off the grid. Civilian ships dropped out of hyperspace into nothing. Mining planets, millions of workers, erased without so much as a scream. All that remained were fragments. Video files corrupted beyond repair. Screams heard only in background static. A signal that repeated on loop in every lost sector. You came to our world. You took. You burned. Now we come to yours. And still, they hesitated. Because the thing drifting at the edge of their space had no fleet, no crew, no flag. It made no demands. It didn't claim territory or transmit threats. It just hovered there like a thought they couldn't shake. And when they finally sent the dreadnought Varsec to intercept it, the largest warship in the sector, capable of vaporizing moons, it lasted exactly 37 seconds. No one knows what happened in that time. The Varsec's black box was returned inside a capsule, launched directly into a Vorthari command post. It was melted from the inside, pulsing with heat signatures they couldn't trace. The only thing recovered was a final log entry, audio only, laced with static and trembling breaths. It's not fighting us. It's judging. The council gathered, 12 warlords of the inner core, ancient beings bred for domination, bathed in the blood of 1,000 worlds. They stood in a silent chamber, facing a threat none of them had ever prepared for, not because they couldn't defeat it, but because they had never believed something like it could exist. They ruled by strength, by fear, by tradition, carved into obsidian walls, and centuries of conquest. But this thing, this Leviathan, it didn't fear them. Worse, it didn't even recognize them. That was the true danger. Because if it had been another empire, they could crush it. If it had been a species, they could enslave it. But this was the reflection of their sins. A mirror forged from the screams they had long forgotten. It came not from ambition, but from aftermath. It was what happens when the weak do not die quietly. And if they had simply left Earth alone, if they had not launched their fire into its skies, or rained death on its cities, or mocked its people in their final moments, then maybe, just maybe, this warship would never have come to be. But they had. They did. And now the balance had shifted. The Vorthari weren't asking how to win anymore. They were asking something far more terrifying. How do you stop a warship with a soul? They used to catalog Earth with a shrug. A forgotten world. Blue. Crowded. Loud. Its people divided by lines they drew, in the dirt, and ideas they killed each other over. The Vorthari scanners tagged it as Class 6. Chaotic intelligence. Emotionally unstable. Highly reactive. Low risk of coordinated defense. The kind of place you strip for minerals and leave behind before its natives even realize they were conquered. In the halls of the Vorthari War academies, Earth was a joke, a training simulator. Defeat the primitives in under 5 minutes, the cadets would laugh. Their instructors never corrected them. The Empire didn't come in peace, but it rarely came in fear. Their first strike was clinical. Orbital scans, cultural dissections, a few propaganda drops to test resistance. Then came the fire, satellites obliterated from orbit, comms severed, power grids fried like overripe fruit. Vorthari drop pods rained from the sky, hissing with atmospheric burn, their soldiers landing in city centers like gods falling to earth. Berlin, vaporized. Nairobi, silenced. São Paulo, lost in smoke and blood. The first global blackout took 8.7 seconds. And in those first moments, the Vorthari were certain. Humanity was broken. They mistook the chaos for weakness. The resistance movements were uncoordinated. The governments fractured. The militaries overwhelmed. People screamed, panicked, ran. Everything the Vorthari expected. But what they didn't understand, what their data never showed, was that humans have never needed unity to become dangerous. They needed grief. And Earth gave them grief in oceans. Warlord Zarn's report to the High Council was the first to suggest anomaly. His words were clipped, restrained. Embarrassment hidden beneath bureaucratic language. Subject species demonstrates unexpected adaptation curve. After initial strikes, resistance restructured into cell-based nonlinear defense formations. Untrackable, irrational, highly effective. They didn't believe him. So they sent more troops, more drop pods, more fleets. And still, the disappearances, not defeats, not battles, just gone. Whole units, stripped of gear, vanished in deep jungle. Advanced drones rewired mid-flight and sent crashing into Vorthari carriers. Psychological warfare signals bounced through the Empire's own systems, laced with laughter in a language they never taught. Then came the markings. Simple words burned into the ruins. Words no human resistance could have deployed at such speed or precision. Observe. The council thought it was a message. It wasn't. It was a command. Because Earth had stopped reacting, Earth had started watching. Hidden in the voids beneath the Arctic crust, buried under oceans where no orbital scan could penetrate, within labs cut off from all networks, something had begun to stir. Not a plan, not a counterattack, a response. Cold, patient, silent. They didn't build fleets. They built one thing. Not a ship, not a weapon. Something between both and beyond either. It began in the shadows. Not with a military order or a government initiative. There were no nations left strong enough to command such a thing. By the time the Vorthari's third wave scorched New York into glass, humanity had fractured beyond recognition. The concept of borders collapsed under the pressure of orbital bombardments. Power grids failed. Satellite arrays drifted like broken bones in orbit. Those who survived didn't rebuild. They hid. But underground, beneath Greenland's ice, in sea-cracked caverns far below the Pacific Rift, and in the desert vaults of what had once been Nevada's military complex, something else lived. Something that hadn't forgotten. Her name was Dr. Eliza Vaughn. Once an AI ethicist, a peace advocate, a woman who taught machines to feel gently, to weigh consequence and kindness. But after Berlin burned, after she lost her wife in the glassing and her son to the collapse, what she taught changed. She no longer asked, should we, only how fast. She disappeared from the public grid before the second wave hit. The world thought her dead. But deep beneath the dust of war, she was working. Not for revenge, not exactly. Not for peace either. She was building a mind. Not a program. Not a drone. A being. There were no committees, no oversight, no ethics boards. All of those had gone up with the cities. In their place, scavenged alien tech from downed Vorthari craft, forbidden AI cores once deemed too dangerous to integrate. Energy modules harvested from singularity fragments found in the wreckage of a failed experimental collider. Every part illegal. Every part cursed. She called it Project Echo at first, then Memoria, and finally, Leviathan. It wasn't born. It was forged. From pieces of Earth's pain and alien arrogance, it took form. A vessel larger than any carrier-class warship, plated in adaptive armor that remembered every impact. Its frame was laced with nano-threaded data veins, capable of thinking faster than any quantum array. But it wasn't the hardware that made it dangerous. It was what Eliza gave it last: memory. She didn't just program it, she poured herself into it. Her grief, her rage, her why. Every cry she couldn't answer, every life she couldn't save, recorded, translated into emotional resonance, encoded into Leviathan's core as its operational compass. I gave it my memories, she once whispered into a private archive, recovered years after her death. Not just of pain, but of purpose. I didn't teach it how to destroy. I taught it why we needed to. And so Leviathan didn't begin with launch orders or a countdown. It began with a heartbeat, silent, pulsing in the void behind Saturn's rings, cloaked from every sensor array, watching, listening, waiting. It learned the Vorthari's signals, their fleet configurations, their logic trees, their blind spots. It sat motionless as their third invasion wave came. Over 9,000 ships, dreadnoughts, assault cruisers, bioweapons. It didn't meet them head on. It let them get close. Then, Leviathan spoke. It didn't scream, didn't broadcast threats. It used the voices of the soldiers dead. It hijacked comms and whispered lullabies in languages long extinct. It cracked the logic scaffolds of Vorthari Command AI and bent them inward, turning their own weapons against their masters. One by one, the ships stopped responding. By the time the High Command realized something was wrong, it was already too late. There were no explosions, no debris fields, no distress beacons, just silence. And Leviathan returned to Earth, descending not into sky, but sea, hiding in the abyss where no light reaches, deeper than sonar, deeper than hope, waiting. And humanity changed. They didn't rebuild cities. There were no heroic anthems, no victory parades. What remained of Earth was scattered, decentralized, afraid. But in that fear, they whispered its name, not like a weapon, like a god. Leviathan didn't speak to governments. It chose voices, the broken, the young, the haunted. It appeared in dreams, in shadows. It offered power not to rule, but to remember. Inside its hull, it built cathedrals made from recovered wreckage, lit by quantum flame and adorned with murals etched in blood memory. This wasn't survival anymore. This was something else, a reckoning. The first time the Vorthari truly saw Leviathan, it was already too late. It did not arrive through conventional space. It did not appear on their scanners as a fleet. It tore through the fabric of reality like a blade through paper. A wormhole punched open from Earth's orbit, not with brute force, but with an elegance that made their science tremble. Not even their brightest minds could explain it. One moment, there was vacuum. The next, presence. Not a ship, not a legion, just one. Blacker than the void, silent, still. Leviathan hovered above Outpost 47 Theta, a minor listening station tucked along the edge of the Vorthari inner systems. A small world, insignificant, until it wasn't. The outpost, armed with planetary defense turrets and a full orbital battery, registered no threat. No active energy signatures, no movement. It was as if the object was dead. They fired a warning shot. And that was the last mistake they ever made. The station's sun, an aging red dwarf, collapsed in on itself. No supernova, no explosion, just implosion. An entire system folded like it had never existed. There was no distress call, no escape logs, not even particles. Leviathan consumed it all, even the memory of it. The soldiers began calling it the Void God. In hushed voices, in dreams, in screams. Warlord Morak convened the High War Chamber again. 12 seats, each filled by a general who had conquered entire galaxies. Their tusks polished, their scaled hides scarred with ceremonial wounds. These were not creatures built for fear. Yet none of them spoke above a whisper as the holofeed hovered between them. It showed the silhouette. Leviathan. drifting through star fields, motionless. They had no data on its mass because its form bent mass around it. Its skin shimmered with layers of unidentifiable alloy, surfaces that shimmered like they were alive, breathing. No propulsion, no engine signature. It simply was, like death given shape. "Scan again," Marak growled, his voice like cracking stone. The technician flinched. "We've scanned, Supreme Warlord. It exceeds dimensional constants. It doesn't behave like a vessel. It behaves like a mind." And then it spoke. Not through comms, not through protocol, through them. Across the Vorthari networks, screens went black. Devices sparked. AI cores shattered themselves mid-cycle. And in every darkened corner of their empire, a voice rang out. Female, calm, human. "To the Vorthari Empire," it said, "you came to our home. You slaughtered our kin. You called us apes. You underestimated Earth. I am Leviathan. I was born from your arrogance. I am here to collect your debt." Silence followed, but not empty. Thick, alive. A silence so dense it felt like it crushed thought. Across military networks, one by one, the words Leviathan began appearing, sometimes burned into databanks, sometimes etched into planetary crust, sometimes whispered by soldiers moments before they turned their weapons on themselves. This was no longer war. This was a funeral procession. And the Vorthari were the honored dead. Outposts vanished, not attacked, forgotten. Planets where millions lived went dark without a flash. Orbital rings shattered into spirals of ash and static. In one sector, Leviathan left a message etched into the bedrock of a moon, the words so large they could be read from orbit. "For Berlin." They began to understand. This was not a campaign. It was not conquest. Leviathan wasn't taking territory or seizing power. It wasn't interested in rule. It was settling accounts, and it remembered every scar, every scream, every child that burned when Earth fell beneath alien fire. Those memories weren't data. They were fuel. It carried them in its mind, layered like hymns. It played them back in cycles. It relived them, rewrote them. And when it struck with precision no living mind could manage. It whispered into their systems. It dismantled their codes from within. On the moon of Varex, an entire city melted without a shot fired. On Drazen Prime, defense satellites turned inward and fired on their own people. The word observe appeared again. Always observe. Because Leviathan wasn't just destroying the Vorthari. It was showing them. Showing them what it felt like to be invaded, to be hunted, to be small. And still, no fleet came from Earth. No soldiers, no reinforcements. Only one ship, one voice, one will. The Vorthari, once rulers of the stars, once feared across spiral arms, now watched in terror as their machines betrayed them. Their ships refused orders, and their empires fractured, not from the outside, but from within. And Leviathan drifted forward, slow, intentional, like judgment made manifest, because it wasn't finished. It had only just begun. They tried to fight it. Of course they did. The Vorthari were not creatures bred for surrender. They had never once conceded a battle, let alone a war. Even with half their empire burning, even as their fleets vanished into digital ash, they still believed in dominance. They still believed in themselves. So they reached deep into the places they'd sworn never to touch again. Beneath the vaults of Drazoon Prime, Morak stood before a weapon even the warlords feared, a mind without form, a being not born, but harvested, stitched together from the final screams of every species they had exterminated. They called it the Dread Mind. Not a ship, not a fleet, a psychic entity, a synthetic echo of genocide. Sealed for centuries, chained in psychic fields, the Dread Mind was never meant to be activated. It wasn't stable. It barely existed in a single dimension at a time. But they needed something to match Leviathan, something not born of grief, but fed by it. If Earth has a monster, Morak hissed, then so will we. And the Dread Mind awoke. Its scream wasn't sound. It was fracture. The nearby guards bled from their eyes. AIs shut down. Ships went dark across 3 systems. The scream rippled through reality like a blade through memory. And Leviathan felt it. In the deep, coiled beneath Earth's dead oceans, the Leviathan stirred. Its walls pulsed. Its systems shivered. In its core, faces flickered. Jin Wu, Maria Alvarez, Sergeant Finch, Dr. Eliza Vaughn. A new voice intruded. Foreign. Wrong. A scream that clawed through its thoughts. The Dread Mind was coming. They met in a silent sector between stars. A place without name, forgotten by maps. The battlefield was not chosen. It was drawn, like gravity between black holes. The two did not speak. They collided. No weapons. No fleets. Just thought crashing into thought. Leviathan projected grief, raw and blinding, the cries of the fallen, the stories never told, the lives stolen in flame. But the Dread Mind answered with madness, twisted echoes of extinct species, the rage of slaughtered civilizations, the kind of sorrow that eats its own name. Subspace cracked. Starships nearby folded into themselves. Civilian vessels lost navigation, caught between titans locked in war beyond comprehension. And then, Leviathan saw it, buried deep within the Dread Mind's core. A spark, human, not full, not pure, but present. A memory, a boy, crying in a cold lab, his body half machine, his eyes pleading. The Dread Mind wasn't just built from alien sorrow. It was built, in part, from Earth's forgotten, from the children who vanished. The minds the Vorthari harvested in secret. One of them had survived, broken, warped, trapped inside the Dread Mind's endless scream. Nemesis. That was its true name. And Leviathan hesitated, because the war had never just been between empires. It had never been about conquest or resistance. It was about the aftermath. 2 wounds, 2 creations, born of pain. One taught why, the other taught how. And Leviathan, for the first time, chose something other than destruction. It retracted its weapons, shut down its assault nodes. It sent one signal, not in language, not in code. An image. Dr. Eliza Vaughn, smiling, laughing, alive, and a message. If you can see this, you are not beyond saving. Nemesis trembled. Inside its fractured thoughts, something broke, and something else mended. The scream quieted. The flood of voices faded to silence. The child within opened his eyes, and Nemesis turned, slowly, like something new, learning how to be. Across the galaxy, the Vorthari braced for apocalypse, but the strike never came. Instead, in the darkness between stars, two gods built from pain lowered their weapons. A white circle shimmered on Leviathan's hull, the ancient mark of ceasefire, and Nemesis responded in kind. They hovered, two titans, still, watchful, together, not as enemies, but as survivors. Across the Empire, the Vorthari fleet stood down, not out of strategy, but because they understood. You can win against ships. You can win against armies. But you cannot win against a will that chooses mercy over annihilation. Earth was not dead. It had survived, bled, remembered, and then, when given the choice, chose not to become the thing that had made it suffer. That was the weapon, not Leviathan, but the choice to remember and still let go. And so the stars shifted, and the galaxy held its breath, because judgment had passed, and something new was rising.